Welcome back to Crux Stationalis, where we continue our Lenten pilgrimage through Rome's station churches. Today we explore three churches, each bearing witness to different aspects of our faith. San Marco al Campidoglio, a church rooted in the legacy of St. Mark the Evangelist and the Byzantine influence in Rome. Santa Pudenziana, one of the oldest Christian worship sites in the city and home to a Eucharistic miracle, which is why I would say this would be Blessed Carlo Acutis' favorite Roman station church. And I say that because he was a member of the Pontifical Academy of the Culturum Martyrum Romanum, of the cult of Roman martyrs. He had, of course, his strong devotion to the Eucharist and the presentation that he did of all of these Eucharistic miracles, this one included, but also he was tied to this historic archival sort of academy of Pontifical Academy, which preserves this devotion to the martyrs in the catacombs in the Roman Station Church itinerary. And finally, we go to San Sisto Vecchio, marking the site where Pope St. Sixtus II encountered his deacon for the last time, St. Lawrence, before both were being led to martyrdom. Let's hear these stories. The station church for Monday of the third week of Lent is San Marco al Campidoglio. San Marco stands just below the Capitoline Hill, near the ancient heart of the city. While often overlooked today, it has a deep connection to the early Christian community and evangelization of Rome. It's a church founded by a pope named Mark. Tradition holds that this church was founded in 336 AD by Pope St. Mark, making it one of the oldest Christian places of worship in Rome. It was dedicated to St. Mark the Evangelist, one of the four gospel writers and a companion of St. Peter. The evangelist is believed to have spent time in Rome before traveling to Alexandria, where he was martyred. This dedication underscores the continuity between the apostolic mission and the church in Rome. Just as Peter and Paul preached in the city, so too did Mark contribute to the spreading of the faith. San Marco is also significant for its strong Byzantine connections. During the time of Pope Gregory the IV in the 9th century, the church was rebuilt in the Byzantine style, and later renovations retained this Eastern Christian influence. The apse mosaic dates back to the 9th century and depicts Christ enthroned with saints. You see him on like a little kind of carpet throne, including Pope St. Mark, presenting a model of the church to him. And so we have St. Mark the Evangelist, St. Felicissimus, and other early saints. As we also, a beautiful thing is when you enter the church, you descend down some steps to an older, lower level of Rome, and then you're greeted with this massive mosaic, which is elevated on an elevated sanctuary, and so you really go away into a different place when you enter this church, coming just off busy Piazza Venezia in Rome. In the Middle Ages, San Marco became the home church of the Venetian community in Rome. This is why you can see symbols of Venice, especially the Lion of St. Mark. Even today, the Venetian Republic's influence remains visible in the church's art and relics. San Marco reminds us that our faith is meant to be shared. St. Mark recorded the gospel to preserve Christ's teachings for generations, and in our Lenten journey, his example challenges us to live and proclaim that gospel boldly, just as he and the other evangelists did. And so also on the Tuesday of the third week of Lent, we go to Santa Pudenziana, what I would say is Blessed Carlo Acutis' favorite Roman station church if I would be interviewing him today on Crux Stationalis. Because we encounter a Eucharistic miracle and we have the early presence of St. Peter in the city of Rome. It's one of the oldest churches in Rome, and because it was a first century Christian house church, which means it was a place of formation of catechumens. Then there was like a little place for them to be taught. Then there was a place, a baptistry basically, and a place for liturgy. And St. Peter himself was hosted by Senator Pudens, according to tradition, as it was his home. He was a Roman nobleman who, as early as the 1st century, converted to Christianity and welcomed St. Peter into his home. It's believed that St. Peter himself celebrated Mass here, making it a site of immense historical and spiritual significance. The relic of the altar upon which St. Peter celebrated Mass, part of it is in an altar in Santa Pudenziana. There's an altar of Christ giving keys to St. Peter, and underneath there is where this relic is kept. One of the most striking features, however, of this church is the Eucharistic miracle preserved within the Caetani Chapel. A priest was celebrating Mass in the year 1610, and he was overcome with doubt about the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. At the moment of consecration, the host fell to the steps of the altar, but miraculously left behind a visible imprint of the host and a stain of blood on another step. The miraculous sign remains to this day, a powerful testimony to Christ's words, "This is my body." The apse mosaic is the oldest apse mosaic in Christian Western art, from the early 5th century, dated around the year 410. You can explore it in the video tour of the church in the description of this podcast. I've linked it there. It portrays Christ enthroned, surrounded by the apostles, in a setting that symbolizes the heavenly Jerusalem. The background of it is Jerusalem, but all of the rooftops are golden. The apostles are clothed in senatorial garbs to show that as Rome was crumbling, as Rome was falling at the same time that this mosaic was being put up, this earthly city was being replaced by the city of God, where in this new regime, in this full regime, which is Christ himself, each and every citizen of this city of God, has dignity, has rights. Whereas in Rome, in contrast to Rome, there were levels of rights, different classes of people who were also seen as lesser according to these levels. And Christ completely changes that. And that's why, we stress dignity of each and every person. That's why this topic, where the church is the only one who preserves that fully and intensely. And any city that doesn't crumbles eventually, even if they have at one time the glories of Rome. And so we go before this mosaic and we see also a bejeweled cross at the center of the mosaic behind Christ, sitting upon Calvary, because Constantine himself put a cross like this on Calvary as a sign of victory of Christ's passion, death, and resurrection. And so even in early Christian art, we see that the crucifixion isn't a scene that was depicted so much. Rather, for example, the first scene of the crucifixion depicted in art that we have is on a door of the first Roman station church on Ash Wednesday of this whole penitential pilgrimage. We go to this beautiful Basilica of Santa Sabina, and to find the crucifixion, you have to go to outside to the porch and look up to the far left corner of the door to see the crucifixion. Instead, there was this sense of depicting the glory of Christ's death and resurrection. We've seen sort of the development of this. We have Santa Sabina at the beginning of Lent. And then we went to San Clemente last week, where we have a 12th century mosaic with Christ depicted crucified at the center. And the cross is this blue, deep sort of abyss of a cross studded with doves who representing the 12 apostles. And so you have this call back to this bejeweled cross of glory, and yet you also have this development of depicting more for our sake, for those who are looking on, to have more of a visual, natural image to give sort of life to our meditation, so that because we overcomplicate prayer all the time. I know this is getting a bit long now for this podcast, but we overcomplicate prayer. We think we have to be like the saints. The saints knew they had to be themselves, and in that they flourished in their prayer, in their relationship with Christ. We simply have to go before God and maintain his presence throughout the day. Yeah, just a little piece of advice. Whether you're moaning in prayer or joyful in prayer or sad in prayer, the important thing is that you're praying. And I'll just leave it at that. Our third Roman Station Church for this week, because I am catching up on podcasts, is the Roman Station Church for the Wednesday of the third week of Lent, San Sisto Vecchio. And it is the place of the meeting place of Pope Sixtus II and St. Lawrence prior to their martyrdoms. Our final stop takes us there. It's located on Via Appia, an ancient road lined with the tombs of Christian martyrs. That's how we get out to the catacombs. The church marks the site of one of the most poignant moments in Christian history. We've been talking about St. Lawrence multiple times. This is another church dedicated in some way to him. In 258 AD, Emperor Valerian issued a decree ordering the execution of Christian bishops, priests, and deacons. Pope Sixtus II was arrested while celebrating the Holy Mass in the catacombs of San Callisto and was led away to his execution. As he was being taken to his death, his faithful deacon St. Lawrence ran to him in tears. Lawrence, knowing he would soon share in his master's fate, cried out, "Father, where are you going without your deacon? Never have you celebrated the holy sacrifice without me." To which Pope Sixtus II replied, "My son, in 3 days you shall follow me." This prophecy was fulfilled when St. Lawrence was burned alive on a gridiron, joyfully offering himself as a sacrifice for Christ, St. Lawrence being martyred on August 10th. San Sisto Vecchio reminds us of the cost of discipleship. Just as Sixtus and Lawrence remained faithful to the end, we are called to carry our crosses daily and trust in God's promise of eternal life. Just thinking of the stories of these two martyrs, friends, Pope, deacon, nothing mattered except their true devotion to Christ and the laying down of their lives. Today's pilgrimage, kind of pinning these all together through San Marco, Santa Pudenziana, and San Sisto Vecchio, offers us 3 profound lessons. San Marco calls us to evangelization, to proclaim Christ boldly like the evangelist. Santa Pudenziana reminds us of the real presence, to deepen our faith in the Eucharist. And San Sisto Vecchio challenges us to embrace suffering and sacrifice, following the example of the martyrs. As we continue our journey through the station churches, may these reflections strengthen our faith and prepare our hearts for Easter. And as always, check the video description so that you can explore these basilicas in greater depth with my video tours of each of them. And join us tomorrow for another stop on our pilgrimage through Rome at Santi Cosma e Damiano. God bless you and have a good day.